I'm Max. This is Max Makes Music, and this is the Novation Circuit. It's a wonderful little groove box released by Novation a few years back, and despite the breadth of options available on the market for similar devices, I still think this is an absolutely wonderful little instrument and a ton of fun. Now, this video is meant to go over some of the basics, so if you're not interested in those, you can click here to skip ahead to the jam and my final thoughts. Now, let's make some music. Well, the Circuit is a groove box, meaning it's something of an all-in-one music-making platform. It has 2 digital polyphonic synthesizer engines and 4 drum tracks, all of which you can use at the same time. It has a 16-step grid sequencer for each of them, and it'll also let you record notes live if you wish. You have what is initially a bit of a confusing control layout, but at least it was for me. But it's simpler than it looks, I promise. The main conceit of this cute little box is that it has no screen. It's the polar opposite of the little doom-scrolling rectangle you're probably watching this on. All physical controls, not so much feedback, but just enough to get its point across. It's very easy to jump back into if you haven't touched it in a hot minute, which is really helpful when you're trying to learn a metric ton of beat boot making machines all at once. So I'm going to build a basic track with you starting from scratch. And to do that, we hit Sessions and pick an empty unlit square. And from there, you can select Tempo. I really like this cute little number display it has here. You can also hit Shift and Tempo and tap the tempo you wish. You can also add swing if you like. That changes the timing of the beats to add a little humanization to it. So I'm going to go to drum 1 and 2. When you select a drum, it selects them in pairs as it shows 2 16-step sequences at once. If I pick these, we'll add 4 bass drums. We can add more drums by picking the next pair. And we can adjust several parameters of those drums using the top 8 encoders. The top 4 correspond to the first drum, the bottom 4 correspond to the second drum in the pair. We can do all sorts of stuff like adjusting the pitch, and even adding a lot of distortion. All right. And so, if we want to change the drum samples that we're using, we can go here, turn off all of them but the bass drum. We can go Shift, drum 1, and now we have a bank of all the samples we have. It's really nice that you can test them out live while the track is still playing. Go back to the mixer, turn on all the other drums, and there we go. Now, let's start adding a synth. So if we select synth 1, you see here we have 2 rows of pink squares, 2 rows of blue squares. The pink squares are your piano keys. They represent notes that you select from the scale menu. You have your root note that's darker, and you have your type of scale here. It defaults to the minor scale, you can pick major, and so on and so forth. I'm going to go back to the minor. We have C selected as the root note. If you go to synth, you can play it here. These darker ones are the octaves and everything in between. Now, if we think of something we like, we can hit the record button, and while playing, it'll record our notes live. And if we don't like a particular note, we can actually change it per step to that. You can even go in and change the velocity and the gate length of that particular note by hitting gate and velocity over here. See, now that first note is held for a little longer. Now we can add more synths by going to synth 2. Just like with the drums, we can hit shift, synth, and try out different presets. If we want more room to play around, we can hit shift note, and that gives us 4 octaves to work with. We can also change the octave. Hit record. Now let's say we don't like that. We go to patterns, clear. The pattern for synth 2, now it's gone. We can even overdub on top of that. We can even change the length of each individual pattern to achieve some really neat timings. The last thing I wanted to go over was adding effects. So if we go to the mixer again, turn off everything but the bass drum, go to the effects, you see 2 sections here. You see these pink squares and you see these off-white squares. The pink squares represent your delay preset and the off-white represent your reverb preset. Now, one of the big things to understand about the circuit is that a lot of the time, the synth or the drum you're talking about corresponds to the encoder right above it. So if we pick this particular delay preset, it sounds the same, but if we turn up this knob, we add a delay to that bass drum. And if we select a reverb preset, we can do the same here and add some reverb. And this white square here just turns them on and off. If we go back to the mixer, we can add everything back. We can go back to the effects. I can pick the delay again, add a little bit of delay to my hi-hats, maybe a little reverb. When we're all done with that, you can play around with the filter. You can go from high pass, low pass, whatever you like. It's a lot of fun. Now, if you want to get a little bit deeper with the synths, you can see that these 8 encoders let you change a bunch of parameters for that particular synth. The problem is that without a screen, you can't actually tell what they do until you press them, until you turn them. Now, if you plug it into a computer, you can actually see what they do, but I just like to listen and see. It's a little more fun. And there we have it. Easy as that. so I hope you like that. Now, why did I make this video when there's so much great gear out there? Why review this thing that's quite a few years old at this point? I think it's a great baseline device for explaining electronic music to folks and show them what you can do simply by listening rather than what you're seeing. Seeing tends to get pretty complicated when you're looking at all sorts of knobs and waveforms and things that you might be afraid of when you're just getting into electronic music, and I think this simplifies it to a great place. Now, it comes loaded with a lot of great preset sounds and a lot of controls over them to make them your own. And if you want to learn more about what's going on in here, you can log into Novation's website, plug this thing in, and mess around with some of the oscillator parameters, load in your own samples, and so on and so forth. Now, why do I love it in particular? Well, to me, groove boxes are at their best when they tick three particular boxes. Now, those are battery, speaker, and tiny form factor, and this has all three. You can actually power it using AA's, USB power, or with an AC adapter that's included. I use rechargeable batteries and they do just fine. And as far as making music on the couch goes, this thing gets a 17 out of 10 as far as I'm concerned. It doesn't even heat up, which is fantastic. It has 3.5 millimeter headphone out, as well as stereo line out, 1/4 inch. And it's got MIDI in and out via 3.5 millimeter jacks for interfacing with your external gear, which it's absolutely fantastic for. Now, the amount of updates Novation has rolled out for this thing are staggering. And if you haven't updated yours in a while, I absolutely think you should, as it adds a ton to the bass experience. It's really obvious why they bothered putting in so much effort into developing it, as it's unique and wonderful and shouldn't be overlooked by even seasoned music makers. It's not a DAW, and it doesn't seek to be. It makes you think differently while you're working, and I think a hallmark of a great device is making you think differently while not stretching your brain too much, such that you don't want to return to it later on. Now, do I think that you should get this still? Yeah, probably, if it looks appealing to you. If you already have your eyes on a different product for a different purpose, then that thing probably does that thing better than this. But if you just think that this is all a lot of fun, then yeah, go for it, because I promise it really is. Now, could you do all this stuff on a phone? Yeah, I guess. You can do pretty much anything on a phone nowadays, but will you get this kind of workflow? I don't think so. And I think that that's its most valuable asset at the end of the day. And Novation knows it too, because none of their updates have ever really compromised its basic workflow. And I really hope they apply that again in the future, because this thing could make for a great sequel. Now, if you enjoyed the video, please like, comment, subscribe. I'd really love to know your thoughts. I absolutely adore explaining gear of all sorts: synths, drum machines, samplers, modules, anything that can help people get the most out of their gear. And with that, I'm Max, this is Max Makes Music, and I hope I've helped you make something.